Welcome to the LTG Show, episode 193. My name is Tony Hannity's.
I'm Radford Castro.
The show is brought to you by Audible.com. Get your free audiobook trial at audibletrial.com/lazy. How is everybody doing tonight? As we had stated, it's the two of us. Sean Wilburn unfortunately could not be here tonight, but we will fill his shoes with Filipino feet. Brad, it's been a while since we've got you back on the podcast, so thank you very much for
Thanks for
coming
bringing me back.
Oh, sure, yeah. So, I mean, we might be seeing you a little bit more often, as it seems, so that's cool. That's going to be awesome. And for those of you that do follow the website, because I know all of you do, some things might come to change on the site as well. In good manners. So, but before we go too far in detail, I do want to give everybody some contact information. So you can find us at obviously lazytechguys.com. You can email us at comments@lazytechguys.com, or just give us a phone call at 707-722-5299. Right now the lines are open. I sound like a telethon guy, but also we have the Q&A open here on the Google Plus Hangout. So. If you have any questions or comments, tech-related questions or comments related to the topics at hand, please let us know, and we will try to address that. So let's go ahead and start off the show with something really awesome. NSA is collecting faces.
Woohoo!
Yeah, so our good, I was going to say good friend, the gentleman, or I don't know if you think he's a gentleman or not, but the individual, Mr. Edward Snowden, found another, well, not a leak, but another document which characterized or showed that the NSA is collecting, as it stated, millions of images per day. Mm-hmm. These images are collected not only from social media, but even email, text messages, video conferencing, and other forms of communication. Rad, I don't know about you. I'm very much in the public. I take pictures of my family. I take pictures of myself. I'm Mr. Selfie. I hate this. I hate this song, by the way. But you know, I'm on Instagram. I'm on Foursquare. I'm on everything. So I'm the exact opposite of someone who is Mr. Tinfoil Hat. But this scares me, and it's weird because, like, I know I'm in the public, but the fact that they could be cataloging all of my faces and building a clone in the backyard that I don't know about based off of my facial, 3D renderings, or whatever they could be doing with it. It's quite scary. It is. I know that this is a very much post 9/11 kind of reaction, and there's no question about that because if we knew before the incident what the individuals look like based off of all the information, and we had it in a systematic manner, we might have been able to avoid it and stop it. But because all the information we were getting was all over the place from all these different organizations and agencies, they didn't even talk to each other properly. That's why it happened. Right. Now that we can somewhat talk to each other through the NSA, so to speak, things like this can be I guess shared with all the clandestine organizations within the government. Mm-hmm. But the everyday person, although they want that safety, this is way too much Big Brother. So what kind of backlash do you think is going to happen after this?
I don't know. I think one of the biggest concerns, obviously, is the fact that, obviously the more glaring issues are like the privacy and things like that. But I think the even bigger issue is how NSA even deals with the data. So as you pointed out, the NSA obviously they're looking out for us in terms of national security and stuff like that. But it sort of makes me wonder though how they can even handle all that data. As you know, after collecting images in the millions per day, it's also going to have to be difficult to see if there is regular Radford, Smiley Radford, and duck-faced Radford, to see if those are two different people or me. So, and I really don't, that's one thing I still need to understand is that if NSA can really even make effective use of all of that data, you know, versus just collecting everything. And of course, there's also, since they're collecting that much data, there's also the possibility of it being exploited at some level. So, that's the other thing that kind of does bother me. And you know, at any given point, as they're collecting all this data, which is now not so much of a secret now, thanks to Mr. Snowden, it it just gives me a sense of like, not only are they collecting all this data, they can exploit, you know, any person at any given level, and still not even know what to do with the data for those who they should be investigating on. You know what I mean? So it's really hard to say. You know, maybe you shouldn't be doing this on a daily level. Maybe they should be doing this on a case-by-case basis, where, you know, they might find someone that they feel is suspicious, and then start doing that, as opposed to just cataloging anything that they see.
Well, that's the mentality that, you know, the government, the NSA, has the ability to. They're already, you know, collecting our text messages, our emails, and they have it in a separate cache file, as well as our photographs, obviously, at this point. But according to the documents that Edward Snowden revealed, the NSA doesn't do anything with them until they need to, and that the argument is. The argument is, just as you said, at what point is it okay to take that extra step to actually look into it? Because they're just collecting, they're not looking. Right. Collecting and looking are two different things, but what point is it okay to start looking? Because if you look too late, then you have things like the Boston Marathon bombing.
Right. You know? And even if you are looking, how can what is the value of collecting that much? All right, so you're collecting millions of images. There are so many variations of faces, angles of those faces, different facial expressions of the same faces. I mean, to be able to catalog them and actually try to decipher between those. I mean, we see them in science fiction movies all the time where, you know, it takes seconds to actually guess from someone walking through the intersection that this is the bad guy that they're trying to catch. But that's almost never the case, you know, and I'm willing to bet, you know, on my left leg that, for the most part, if they're going to find, you know, me, you know, it's going to be easy. Now, if you're going to find, you know, between a million people that potentially, you know, maybe a terrorist or whatever, I don't know. It's really hard to say. You know, there's going to be, of course, faces that are going to be similar, faces that are going to be different. They're going to be coming in different angles, different lighting. I really don't know the really big value in it if you're going to be collecting that much information. Well, it's actually almost self-defeating too, because of the fact that you're going to be doing all that collecting and identifying as much as, you know, a suspect. Now, I was also taking a look at the fact that a lot of state and local law enforcement do the same thing. They do a lot of facial recognition. They work with a wide range of facial imagery. But the thing that really bothers me also is that I'm pretty sure that the NSA also has this catalog. And I think the local and law enforcement are probably more, they need to be more in that direction. You know, they need to help at that level where there's a hierarchy of agencies that are like, you know what, we have these certain people that we feel are suspicious. And then the NSA should be like, you know what, we should have some information on them. Let's look at that. You know, rather than just trying to collect everything. Because what if you were pulling a single person and you find, hey, there's 5,000 images of this guy, and like 80% of them don't even look like him. Mm-hmm. So that can be, you know, it's a point that a lot of developers make. Like, there's a couple of guys I know that do a lot of facial recognition apps. You know, where we're seeing this also with Facebook, where, you know, when you're taking a picture and you're tagging a person, they try to determine what that, you know, who that person is. And, you know,
Google does that.
So it's nothing new. I mean, these algorithms are nothing new, but at the same time, they can only be as accurate as the number of pictures that you use and the quality of those pictures.
And the developer who developed the
algorithm. Absolutely. So many factors that are involved. It almost makes it seem like this is a little overkill. But at the same time, you know, Mr. Stone does make some points, you know, in terms of like exposing this to the public, because this is something that does need to be transparent to people like you and me.
Well, one thing that was revealed also, one of the technologies that the NSA does use is called PitPat, which is actually a company owned by Google. Mm-hmm. And it's their algorithm that they use in part to help aid categorize all the pictures that they get. So like you said, yeah, I mean, when you get a group of people, there's bound to be two people that look fairly similar. At what point is the computer going to be smart enough to differentiate them and say, oh, this guy and that person are actually two different people? 2 years ago, they might have thought, oh, for example, your brother at one point might have looked like you, so they might have auto tagged him as Radford by accident. Nowadays though, because there's so many more pictures, they can cross reference it, and that algorithm is a lot more accurate to the point where you don't even have to say if it was correct or not. You already know that it's correct. So
I know, but what about those pictures that, I mean, I can understand from an algorithmic perspective, like they gather pictures from us because they're in our album, they're coming from our profile, so they automatically guess, this is us, right? And that's substantial, right? But then there's going to be data where it's like, facial, like pictures are not that have the terrorist in them. You know what I mean? The actual terrorist in there may not come from his album per se. It will come from someone else's. This guy may have a beard, or may not. He might have sunglasses on, or may not. Those kinds of things are like subtle cues that could throw off an algorithm by big time. But that data would be like the most pertinent data that they would need to make this ongoing investigation. But how can you do that? You know what I mean? Like, there's going to be other guys with trench coats and sunglasses and beards, and to actually now have them stacked together under the same veil, it's almost self-defeating, don't you think? So, when I look at that, it's like I'm reading this other part of the document just now, where it says where part of the document says that the program returned 42 results and displays several that were false hits, including a middle-aged man. And these are just guys with beards. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it's never perfect, but at the same time, when those kind of pictures or when those kinds of images are collected, so for the layman, they're thinking, wow, this is kind of violating because, like you were saying, I upload pictures from everywhere. I'm on SmugMom, I'm on Google+, I'm on, I have stuff that's on OneDrive that are linked only. They may have picked up those. But, for the people that we really need to do an investigation on, they're now cluttered by a whole sea of images, which you said earlier, millions per day, millions. So I don't understand the practicality in this. So here's my question, and you could disagree with me or not. I mean, like, do you think part of it too is just the way the media is shaping this? Because now the public perception is, the NSA is now out to get us, as opposed to like, the NSA should be helping us out. Why the hell are they collecting all of this private information, or some of the things that I feel are private to me? I don't go out sharing my album. They're only shared with my Facebook friends. Therefore, I consider them private to myself. But they're found, right? Because anyone could potentially get that image, upload it somewhere, and it's open to the world.
Sure, yeah.
So, but for me, it's sort of like, I thought of it more in a different perspective. Even as a layman, well, is it going to be really effective collecting all this information, or are you just adding more clutter, right? It's sort of like you're going into a grocery store and you're looking for that one particular cereal, but you decide to raid the entire aisle of cereal boxes to find the right one. Does that make sense? Like, you have 50 shopping carts, you put your hand into the aisle and just empty all of the entire aisle of cereal into the cart, and you're like, I was looking for Cocoa Puffs. And there it is. You know what I mean? After doing all of that. So I almost feel like it's just such a waste of money and time, because there's so much bandwidth being used when you download that many images. Millions! Even if you're collecting things in low resolution, like just the 1024-768, that's about, what, 200K? Who knows? Multiply that by 1,000,000. That's a ton of data being wasted on the internet. That's like a ton of data being wasted on hosting, a ton of data being wasted on networks, millions of our tax dollars just on downloading crap they may never use. So that's the thing that kind of strikes me.
I think.
And where does that sit? You know what I mean? Then they have to have hard drives for all this crap.
Yeah.
So there's more than terabytes. They're in zettabyte world now, right? So
Right.
where is that going to go?
I mean, I guess their mentality is it's better to have than not to have, and try to
Not to have, yeah.
try to play catch up.
Right, but
I don't know.
even if
I
they
don't know
didn't
what
have
point.
it,
I don't know at what point do they say, okay, we no longer care about these traits of a person that we're looking for, so let's put that in let's delete that off or whatever. But
it's funny, man. It's like the NSA are like data hoarders. You know what I mean?
yeah,
They're just hoarding everything, just hoarding and hoarding and hoarding. And if you're looking for like your chair, it's like, oh, where that's what's happening. You know what I mean? That's how it
yeah,
feels. Like, like I was watching an episode of that, you know, Hoarders, and I'm like thinking, this is exactly the NSA. There's
yeah.
just clutter of information, and the house is probably, you know, 10,000 times bigger, and now they have to sift through it. So it's crazy. Like, okay, look for beard. We have a billion of those. All right, let's sort it down to the black beards. There's still about 500 million. So that's what I mean. It's like, and these are images. This is not just a person. So
Right.
I mean, like, how far are you gonna? How effective could you possibly be collecting that much information?
Yeah.
So
Well, we will definitely see like if we hear anything more out of this document from Snowden, or if the NSA says anything in regards to that. But um, I guess for the rest of you that are listening and watching, just be aware of this. I mean, there's really nothing you can do unless you put a bag over your head for the rest of your life. But there's.
they'll figure out a way through the bag.
Yeah, or just leave the country. I don't know. There's just
They'll find you there too.
welcome to the new world. It's just
Welcome to the
not good.
internet.
Yeah, you want it free. This is what you got to pay for. I do want to answer a question that we had in the Q&A, but it got deleted. I think it was Cameron Pack who asked it. We are asking, rather, we are answering questions actively in the Q&A. So. If it is related to the discussion, we'll try to implement it. Otherwise, we'll try to answer it like maybe after the fact or later on before the break. But yeah, please keep them coming. If you have any comments or questions, we'd definitely like to implement that into the show. Next up, WWDC 2014. Basically, this was Apple's big hoo-ha. And I know I had my show yesterday where I kind of dove into like the nitty gritty of what was announced. That's not what we're doing here today because that would be another 3-hour show. But I did want to kind of hear from Rad what you thought were the like one win and one fail of the keynote. If you had to like say one to one.
I think the big keynote was the fact that Tim Cook took the shots like that he wanted on Android, and it was very clear about how many times that he was reflecting and creating this new vibe from Apple. I think so much so is his new. The thing that I took out of it is his enthusiasm, you know, for and I mean his voice was very giddy, and he had a chance to I got a chance to watch it. But the one thing that really got me excited is that now this is a place to build new ecosystems, and I was really looking forward to seeing more of what the new iOS would do.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still so far. I mean, they made some things that about the extensibility, which opens up a whole bunch of things to third-party apps, but and open access to Touch ID, which was kind of cool. But
Yeah.
I think the one thing I really like to see more now is what are the big, long-standing barriers, you know, that will get developers into the next level of doing stuff for iOS? Because really, that's
isn't
still
that
up in the future.
Swift? Isn't
Well,
that
yeah.
the new programming language going to help out?
Yeah, kind of. It's still another language. I mean, you look at it and you're like okay, but at the same time, like, what does it have access to? You know,
I mean, the
and they promise all this
developers.
stuff.
Yeah, because he listed all the stuff that Swift has, and he made a joke that everybody at home's like, "What?" Because
Yeah,
I know that's how I was.
yeah.
But I mean, everybody in the auditorium seemed really excited about it. So me, as a non-developer, I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
I can't wait to talk to a developer to
Mhm.
let me know why this is so important. Does it make it easier to write to iOS? And does it make it easier
Not
to
so
scale
much.
for all the
Like,
different sizes of the screens for iPad and iPad Mini, things like that? Or
you know what would make me excited about Swift is, I mean, it's the reason why developers are excited is because they always love developers by nature like learning new languages. But to me, I've always liked learning new languages, but I've always wanted to know the value of why they are so popular, why it's going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
And what would make it very popular, what would make it more valuable is if you start to see Swift in different arenas, like, oh wow, you could write, like these Android apps in Swift. Oh, you could do web pages in Swift. Then it starts to become like, wow, then it starts to become more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have yet to see like a single piece of like what the syntax looks like, and are we going to use curly braces, or is it going to look like Visual Basic? Is it going to look more like Ruby on Rails? What is this going to look like? But in the end, it's still another language. Google had something like Go that was very popular among Googles. I use it because it's a very different form of JavaScript. I use Node.js, which is another form of JavaScript, but they use the same language. It's just another way of accessing the tool with less code. So instead of writing like 5 lines or 6 lines, you write 1 line to do something, which is nothing new. .NET has been the pioneer of pushing out rapid application development. And they're trying to get into that realm of like, let's go do stuff with Apple and things, in which they're very, very, very successful at doing.
Mm-hmm.
But Swift is sort of that answer where it's going to be like, you know what, there's these people that want to do an app, but they're unsure. And so Swift is going to be that type where it's going to be easier. But the only problem is that it's not going to be as controlled and as much control as Objective-C, for whatever reason.
Right.
But again, I have yet to see what it is, but there's rumors that have been circulating around in the development community about Swift, and it's like, we'll see. Everyone's like a wait and see attitude just for a bit.
Sure. I mean, there's nothing that's written in it yet to
it's
really
not.
give a
It's
concrete
just sort of like,
impression on
Apple.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, to me, it's another language, and we haven't said like, is it going to have pointers? Is it going to have like, is there going to be hard types? Is it going to be implicit? And what I mean by that, for those who are developers listening to this, is that those things matter when you're writing code, because then it's going to be like, how much control am I going to get? Am I going to get more control or less control? Is it going to be dumbed down for someone that just like has an app idea so they could, create like another Foursquare? Who knows?
So if there was one announcement that knocked you off your feet, what was it?
Nothing really.
Nothing really?
Nothing really stuck out the most.
Okay.
I mean, to be honest, the only thing was just sort of iOS 8, but
sure. Which we all knew that it
Yeah.
was coming. We just want to know what the bare bones, like what
exactly.
what was
Right.
iOS 8 about,
Right.
So in WWDC wins and fail for me, I'd say the big win for me was, well, I guess there are 2 wins. One, with iOS 8, you can actually use a third-party keyboard. iOS 8, which is great because there's so many third-party keyboard, very reputable third-party keyboard developers on Android, and who actually started with Windows Mobile. Swift started the company that Nuance bought. They started on Windows Mobile. Actually, the Samsung Omnia, because I own that thing. But yeah, I mean, everybody's been kind of waiting for that to come to iOS, and I understand why it took so long. There's a lot of security issues, a lot of debugging issues. It just made the overall experience a lot slower. It wasn't consistent. Whatever it is now with iOS 8, they just said, sure, why not? Let's go ahead and do this. And I'm sure they're going to be very strict on which keyboard apps are allowed, but you no longer have to, jailbreak your phone to get it out there. So that was great news. I would say in the another form of a win for this was it wasn't an app, but it was actually their HomeKit announcement. So we knew that there was going to be some sort of platform wherein that third-party developers like Honeywell, iHome, TI could use the same kind of protocols that were approved by Apple, and they could make their physical smart home devices Apple certified with possibly the MFI certification stamped on the box. So instead of having to download the Philips Hue app, you just use the HomeKit app or whatever they're going to eventually call it, and it'll change the color of your lights. And that just makes the overall smart home experience a lot better. You're down to 1 app instead of 23 different apps, which that's kind of where we're at right now. In terms of a fail, I knew it wasn't going to happen, and it's only a fail because I'm on the same boat where I was hoping that they were going to announce it, and that is the iWatch. This is not a hardware conference whatsoever. But they have announced hardware before. I mean, that's where they kind of teased us with the Mac Pro last year, and we didn't actually see the physical, the ins and outs of it until a couple of months afterwards. But I was kind of hoping that, as it is a developer conference, they would say, yeah, we have this new language. It's called Swift, and it now works on an iWatch. I'm like, oh my God, there's the iWatch. But they didn't do that. So in that regard, it's a fail for me. But it doesn't mean that Apple's not working on it. It's not ready. Apple, just like Mark Gurman said, Apple isn't the type of company to announce something and wait a few months to launch it like Samsung is or LG is. They want to announce it, and it's available. It might be available in a preview, but it's available now. And with an iWatch, they didn't want to say, yeah, it's available in a few months, and then everybody, not forget about it. But it just lowers the expectation. And not to say Google is any lower of expectation, but that's just Google's mentality. It's just a difference. So that's cool. Before we move on to some Google talk, I do want to go ahead and take a quick little break and thank our sponsors, Audible.com. So for you listeners and viewers of the LTG Show, all of you guys can take advantage of this wonderful offer from Audible.com. They are the leading catalog of audio downloads, audiobook downloads, but not only books, but even magazines and daily newspapers like the New York Times. So if you don't have time to sit down and read, but you always want to read that awesome book like, I don't know, 50 Shades of Grey or anything, biography, history buffs, this is the place to do it. Sometimes the books are actually read by the authors themselves, which adds a little nuance that you probably won't get anywhere else. So if you go to audibletrial.com/lazy, not only do you get a free book, it's also 30 days to give it a shot. You also get some awesome discounts on other books. And if you sign up for their Premier membership, I think it's a gold membership, you get one free book a month. And that's only 30, I think, like 20 or 30 bucks a month. So it's really good, especially if you are the avid book reader and or listener. And if you have any other books on Kindle, this works with the Whisper Sync, which is really cool, wherein that you can start a book on the Kindle Fire, for example, and then you can continue listening to it where you left off using Audible. So again, this works on Android, iOS, Windows Phone, and of course all the Amazon tablets. And we thank them for being a sponsor of the LTG Show and the LTG Network. So let's go ahead and move on and talk Google. So last week Google showed off the self-driving Google car, and we Rad, you and I have seen the Google car itself, being that we are here in the Bay Area, but that was always a Prius and somebody actually behind the wheel.
Right.
This is literally a self-driving car. There's no steering wheel. There's no like physical foot pedal for gas and brake.
Right.
But it's
there's an emergency stop button.
There is an emergency stop button. Thank you for pointing that out right away, because a lot of y'all were saying there's no buttons whatsoever. There is a button. It's right here. Let me show you. Buttons for stop, for start, pull over, and emergency stop. So yes, when that boulder comes raining toward you, because it's apocalypse time, you can hit that button and then run out of the car. Although it is kind of like the smart car Fiat kind of look, instead of outsourcing to somebody else like they've done with Toyota and Lexus, which is the same company, they build their own, and Google's got the money to do it, and they're going to build about 100 of these things, and I'm sure there's going to be other safety measures, and I don't know if they're actually going to be on the road. They might just continue testing these in like closed courses. Yeah. But I think it's pretty cool. What are your thoughts on this, Red?
I think it's extremely cool. To me, it's like Google's way of saying like, we have a crap load of money. Look what we're doing. I'm serious.
Yeah. No, you're right.
It's really. I mean, the reason why I say this is because if we've been at CES, Samsung decides to show off a curved OLED. Like, look what we can do.
Yeah.
It's just going to be this much, and it costs a ton of money, to manufacture something like this, and of course it's Google doing this, but it just creates this great talking point, and when a company could do something like that, it just shows how forward-thinking they are, that they're willing to try things, and, I think for me, when I see a company do that, and we can talk all day long about like the negativities about it, all of like we understand those things. We understand that there are a lot of negatives behind doing it, and there's a lot of, not so practical and not so pragmatic, things about doing this. But in the end, it's very forward-thinking. It's something that is within the realms of Google's, deep pockets that they could just throw at and see, not just to have talking points, but just to get people to think about how technology can be at a certain level.
Yeah.
And now we've seen this done with, driverless warehouses. Driverless cargo, shifting things. Really horrible term that I used, but it's basically, we've
like
seen
forklifts, the driverless forklifts,
and there's a lot of those, and those happen in real time. They actually do occur out there. They happen in Amazon, and Google decided to take this level and said, well, why not passengers as opposed to just cargo or shipments?
Yeah.
Why not? And I mean, there are obvious drawbacks to them, but at the same time, it's just so freaking cool.
I think it also came at a really bad time because that TV show Startups on HBO poked fun at self-driving cars, and the guy ended up being driven into Silicon Valley. Thank you. Right. He ended up being driven into a trucking container.
Yeah.
There's a big joke, and that's great. That's awesome. And I don't have HBO, so I didn't see it. But the fact of the matter is, the conversation is happening, and if Google doesn't do it, there's really no other major company at this point that can get the headline to do it. There's other car manufacturers that have their self-driving cars, and I know, I know that they're out there. But when Google does it, it's because, like you said, they've got the money to just kind of throw against the wall, whether this becomes a product or not. It is data for them. And they don't necessarily need to use the data for self-driving cars in the future, but they could use it for something completely different.
That's the thing.
LG, for example, got their just to kind of put a similarity. They used data that they got from their self-propelling vacuums that have lasers, and they use that same laser in the LG G3 smartphone. It's using research and development for something completely different. So yeah, I mean that's the same thing with Google Glass. We might not ever see real Google Glass. I'm sure we will. We might not, and they'll use the same technology or similar technology of what they've got in something else that goes in your mouth. I don't know, but
I mean, it's just like a lot of companies do this all the time. Microsoft decided to do an interactive room with using several Kinect sensors.
That was how long ago?
Yeah, that was how long ago. And IBM decides to put one of their AIs into a Jeopardy contest. It's one of those kinds of things where, it's a company's attempt to see a proof of concept and see how it acts in the real world. And I always commend a company that does any of those things, because there's still a lot of companies that make tons of revenue, but I don't see them trying to do anything risky.
Like innovate, change.
I mean, I'll call them out. We'll look at Oracle. You don't see anything coming from Oracle. You don't see anything from Dolby. You don't see anything from... And these guys are making billions of dollars a year. And, I mean, to make 25 of these cars or 100 of these cars, it couldn't possibly be more than, 30 or 40 million. These guys are making billions a year. 40 to 50 billion dollars a year in revenue. Yeah. So even if they use just 100 million of that to do this proof of concept, it's like really chump change. But in the end, you do something very powerful. You not only become a talking point, you end up just trying to, end up just piquing the interest of people that thought about that idea. You know what I mean? And said, hey, I thought about that. And wow, this actually looked like it's something could work. It's probably different from the way I imagined the car.
Sure.
But it's something that at least that person could be like, you know what? Google's a risk taker. I would like to work at Google just because, if they're willing to take risks at these kinds of things, I'm willing to do, I want to position myself in that company to do that sort of project.
Yeah, it just
So
the reason why I brought this up really was because it just really irritates me that people look at it at face value. Like literally, they look at the car as like, oh, it's ugly colors and it looks like it has a smiley face. Who cares? It's a self-driving car. You could
right,
fall
exactly.
asleep, and next thing you know, you're
It's
at
a
the
prototype. It's a
yes, thank you. It's a
prototype.
prototype, and if they ever do go in, they'll have it in pink for you or whatever color.
Exactly. If you want
So
it boxy and sharp, like if you want to make it look like an 8.6, go for it. You know what I
yeah.
mean? But for those like
Well, my son would want it as an 8.6. But it can't drive in the gutters. That's one thing.
that's true.
You'd have to be talking me to do
And
that.
you'd have to go a little faster than 25 miles per hour to
Yes, that
drift.
is
Just
true
a
as
little
well.
faster.
Yeah. No, so I don't know exactly where these are going to be like physically tested. I'm sure, like I said, it's gonna be in closed courses. They're gonna have like makeshift, roads, and they're gonna test things like, oh, if there's a pedestrian that just pops out of nowhere, what's gonna happen with the car? And they're already doing that. So, yeah, we'll see how this pans out and see what's next from Google. So, um, now. Now, you had mentioned a company in terms of innovation. Sometimes companies do innovate, and doesn't always like pan out the way that they were expecting. And Microsoft, unfortunately, got the full brunt of this with Windows 8, and many people have and continue to be very critical of Windows 8. And one thing that people have wanted, even with the updates to 8.1, they're still saying, "Oh, it's great. Thanks for bringing back the X button, but where's my start menu?" And there were some leaked documents that laid out that the start menu, which would be a marriage between the old start menu and the new kind of live tiled buttons, would come out on Windows 8.1 Update 2 sometime this August. But according to Mary Jo Foley, it looks like the new mini start menu for 8.1 won't be a part of the update. It's actually going to be pushed out to 2015. As I've said before, I do work with Microsoft, so everything that I am saying is purely my opinion and has nothing to do with the company, and I'm not revealing anything that haven't seen or will see. But my opinion of the start menu is, first of all, there's many apps out there. So if you want to get the start menu, fine, you can download an app to bring
Yes.
back the start menu.
Right.
It is chunky. It slows down the operating system, but it's there. Second of all, if they do bring back the start menu, I do like the picture that Mary Jo Foley shows, where it does have, it's kind of that side by side where you do see the old start menu, and then literally right next to it you have these little bit of live tiles that culminate of how the start screen is right now. My biggest thing is I would like Microsoft to give people options, because if people are getting used to the start screen and the next thing you know all you have is the start menu, then it's like, well, why did we, and I've talked to you about this before, Rad,
Right.
What's the whole point in learning the start screen if we're just going to go backwards? And one thing I really hope that Microsoft and with Satya Nadella does sit down with the other developers and engineers and the new Windows team is, let's give these people options. Not too many options like Vista, but enough options where they say, okay, I want this and I don't want that, and now I'm happy. That's it.
Why not have it a new paradigm where you just work for both? Like, I remember spending a whole week thinking about how I would design the start menu, or how I would design like an operating system that would work for a desktop and tablet. And I was just thinking about how about Jay Malakani's design, Macalani. I can't remember his last name. I think it's Macalani. He was one of those guys that created these like pure concept designs, of what a start menu could look like, right, in a touch system. And I was thinking, gosh, why does it have to be that way? Why can't we just designate a system that the operating system knows that if you're in a desktop, it's going to look one way. If you're going to be on both, like a Surface, it should be able to know when you're using a keyboard, when you're not using it, when you're using a mouse, and when you're not using it. So when you're on tablet mode, you will have the full start screen, which is very appropriate for that type of paradigm, right? But when you decide to put the keyboard on, why can't we have all of a sudden see the start screen animate into a smaller side, which covers a quarter of the screen,
Mm-hmm.
and it just slowly animates so that all of the large tiles become appropriately, proportioned into that menu system, and you know that it just converted from tablet to desktop. I mean,
Do
it's
you
those
think?
kinds of things.
Do you think that would? Well, I guess the switching already is kind of jarring.
Right.
Do you think the slow animation won't be as jarring, and it'll give the new user time to say, what's going on? It's oh, I see what it's doing. Do you
Yeah.
think that
It's
and
little things like that, because right, what happened is we got an operating system that was trying to work for both, right? It
yeah.
was desktop and tablet, and of course, when you put in a desktop, the biggest complaint was, where the hell are the charms? How do I switch between two different tasks, right?
Yeah.
And so that kind of stuff was really hard because they were trying to make it fit for both. But if they can set this up in such a way where they can see the transition, or even blatantly say this is desktop mode, this is tablet mode, you know what I mean? Or even have a paradigm where it should work, where you're like, okay, swiping this way, it moves the window around. Like we both understand quite easily that when we're using Windows, we do simple things like, hey, I want to actually, scroll up and down the screen by swiping up and down in that particular window, right?
Right.
But you
Right.
start to do complicated things like, what if I want to select more than one folder in that window and I want to drag it into another folder? I mean, those are things now you have to think about in the desktop world, right? So
Yeah.
how do you handle something like that? That's the more challenging issue, I think, that the Windows team has. And if they could solve that problem, they could destroy Apple and Google in a second. Because right now, I really believe, like, the Surface Pro 3 is such a big deal, like, because they're really now thinking, yes, this is the way the laptop is going to be now. This is the new paradigm. This is how people are going to do work. I really believe in that paradigm. It's just now, how is the operating system going to work with that type of hardware? You know what I mean? If I'm going to be if I'm going to be playing World of Warcraft on it, and I decide to take away the keyboard and I'm going to make it touch-based, how does that work? Or is it going to be at the point where a developer is going to say, you know what, we're going to have to figure out a way how we're going to design for both touch and desktop? You know what I mean? Something that satisfies both. A good example of this is the current Internet Explorer, right? Where it makes a lot of sense, right?
IE11.
Right, IE11, and you have tabs there. You can navigate it with the mouse. You can type your address in there with a simple right click. And those are the kinds of things I think developers need to embrace, because I think that is what needs to happen, and Microsoft needs to drive that. So it's going to be super, super, super important to do that, because, I mean, back in the days we had, DOS, and we had Windows 3.1, right? And at the time, everyone was creating their own DOS apps, right, to create, to connect to your Sound Blaster and stuff like that. And then when Windows 95 came out, it was like, oh, cool, DirectX. Oh, cool, everything's in Windows. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Here's direct draw, and then you just make your program. So what I'm hoping Satya Nadella and the rest of the Windows team will do is just create some sort of paradigm, whether it's going to be using Snap, whether it's going to use some combination of Snap or Windows, something where we're going to see some really nice responsive desktop to mobile designs, because I think that's going to be the key. Right now, the web is the big thing, right? Like I do most of my stuff now on the web, and now the web is turned to a point where it's responsive. And what I mean by that is that when you scale, when you actually when you change the size of a website on your window, it changes because it's going to work on your phone, it's going to work on your tablet. So that's what I'm hoping to see on the start menu, dude, because if this start menu works the way I hope it does, I mean, there's a lot of good things to come out of, like, the boys at Redmond. I think they have a lot going for them. So they just need to get that fine-tune, how that paradigm is going to work.
Do you think it should? So here's the question I want to ask you earlier, though. No matter what it is, if they do bring back any incarnation of the start menu, should they wait till 2015, or do they just need to get it out there to win back those people that are like, I'm about to leave, or I'm still on Vista because I can't stand not having a start menu? Should they bring it out sooner than later and deal with the bugs, or have it set up with the future supposed Windows threshold, aka Windows 9?
Let me preface this, since this is my opinion. But in my professional opinion, I really think it's already too late. And so going back by using a start menu, it won't matter. In all honesty, I think whatever this start menu is going to be is going to have to be a new paradigm, to the point where the perception is this is not a start menu. You know what I mean? So, and it might just come down to something where you click on it and it swipes from the side, because anything else that looks similar to it is going to look like a backtrack. You know? So, what I'm hoping to see, and like if I was being put into the designer's chair, is here is like the Metro. Here's the full screen Metro, right? And you tap on the the screen, or you put the keyboard, and all of a sudden the Metro just squeezes really small, and then you see the desktop on the side as it does it. And then the tiles just resize appropriately, and now you're going up and down versus going side to side.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It could be jarring, but again, it's really hard to say until people actually use it. Those are like little analytics and topography that they would need to see, and estimate. But more or less, just be able to see how people are, if people would be satisfied by that kind of experience.
Yeah. So Redmond, if you're watching, send me the alpha disc, and I'll try it, and I'll let you know. I'll keep it hush hush. I'll sign a NDA, whatever. But
Right.
let me try it. All right. Well, that's cool. Yeah, so we're not quite sure about that. Another thing we're not quite sure about is how J.J. Abrams is going to, how his vision of Star Wars Episode 7 is going to be. But one thing we know for sure is that the beloved Aluminium Falcon is
Aluminium?
Aluminium Falcon, Millennium Falcon is going to be in it. So we actually got some leaked photos courtesy of the wonderful and reputable website TMZ. This time they actually do some good. But yeah, we've got them building the Millennium Falcon. There's the cockpit right there, and there's the underbelly of the hull, and yeah, there's the walkway. So I mean, that's an ad. This is a thing. I mean,
Yeah.
this is actually happening, and I mean, yeah. What would Star Wars be without the Millennium Falcon? Oh yeah, it would be Episode 1 through 3. But but this is a good move, obviously, on Abrams' part, like to bring back an iconic ship. There's also some other photos of the X-wing. Supposedly the X-wing is still there. I have to find those. Yeah, but apparently there's like, if you look in the photo, like you see part of the S-foil. Like, oh, there's X-wings. So I don't know if it's Luke's X-wing or if it's his baby brother's X-wing, because this is supposedly 30 years after Jedi. So he's supposed to be maybe 25 in Jedi, so he's 55, maybe 65. In real life, he's like how old now? So
Yes, about that age.
yeah, so it's like, okay, you ain't flying no X-wing, buddy. Okay.
I know.
So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know about you. I actually had a heated discussion with somebody about how he did Star Trek, and I really enjoyed his Star Trek universe. Although it's different, it was really
liked it.
cool. I liked it a lot.
You're talking about both. Did he do both of them, right?
He did, yeah. He did.
Okay,
he
I
did
liked
do
them
both of them.
Yeah.
And so, based off of that, I said, well, Star Trek, in my opinion, was his kind of his. What's the word I'm looking? His trial version, his tryout. Now he's gonna go to the big leagues and do Star Wars, and it's gonna be that much better because even he himself said he's not gonna use so much green screen, so much CGI. He's gonna use real world kind of special effects like they did when with Star Wars: A New Hope, Episode 4.
I think he's gonna. I completely agree with you. I think in the Star Trek world, if you've, and knowing you that you're a Trekkie guy also, there's part of me feels that the Star Trek world, or at least from the movies that I've seen, had a little bit more freedom and play over things like warp drive and how like the Enterprise goes into warp, versus like.
Well, if we're getting to the science of it all.
I know. I mean, well, for me, it's sort of like yeah, exactly. What I'm saying is that license. That particular universe has had its share of freedom between a variety of directors. You know what I mean?
Oh,
and they've had their own play of how they envision. Yeah.
You had
in the universe. And so if anyone is having any fears over J.J. Abrams using like abusive lens flare in the variety of the shots, I don't think that's going to be the case.
Yeah, this is not going to be Michael Bay. I'll tell you that.
Right.
Okay? I think we're safe.
Right.
He screwed up the Ninja Turtles. So.
Yeah, I know.
Stupid noses. I'm still watching it. But,
I know, it's still going to do too much.
Yeah, you have to.
Anyway.
But yeah, back to Star Wars. Yeah, and that's the other thing too. I'm still gonna watch it. No, I mean, no matter what, because no matter what people say about the prequels, I still watch it. Like if someone says, "Hey, we're gonna watch Episode 2," all right, sure. I'm not gonna like leave the room. Like there were some parts that I did enjoy, although like 90% of it was CGI and some of the acting was like some of the fight scenes were just so rigid or like way too choreographed. Like, oh, you look like you're dancing. It doesn't even look like you're trying to hit the guy.
Mm-hmm.
But it's part of Lucas's idea of that universe. So we kind of have to bow to it. Also for the fact that he basically said everything in the expanded universe is not canon, so it doesn't matter. It's like, oh shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but those licensee guys.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they also announced. Well, I don't know if it was like an official announcement or not, but they also showed one of the characters from Game of Thrones is going to be a girl. One of the characters from Game of Thrones is going to be casted, and then also the young 14-year-old African American girl that won, I think, Best Actress for 14 Years of Slavery or something like that. She's also going to be in it. And if I'm confusing her with somebody completely different, I apologize. I don't know names or faces, but I saw this on Machinima real quickly yesterday. And so, yeah, I mean, the cast part of it, obviously, is the all-star cast, but we got these newer all-star people, which is very much in George Lucas's kind of mentality, because like when Episode 4 came out, no one knew who Carrie Fisher was or Mark Hamill. Now everyone knows, and that's how these newer main characters are. Like very few people know them as like stars. Like they might have seen them in other shows like Girls on HBO or like I said Game of Thrones, but now they're going to be full-fledged like silver screen IMAX stars. So this is going to be really cool, and it's going to be a big deal for them, and I hope everything pans out well. And as as the internet is, we're going to see a bunch of other leaks and stuff like that, and we may or may not talk about it on other shows. We might even bring back our movie podcast. We'll see. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me. Rad, thank you very much for joining tonight, and hopefully we'll see you back either next week or the week after, and we'll let everybody know like what kind of changes are coming to the site and when and where. But yeah, before we close out, why don't you let everybody know how they can find you?
Well, you can find me at Radford Castro on Twitter, Facebook, and on the internet. But the best place to check out first would be about.me/RadCastro.
Or just go to nsa.gov/RadCastro.
Pretty much.
All the pictures of Rad Castro, all millions of them.
There's a zillion of them. If you can find yourself into the agency somehow and get past the 5 levels of security, or figure out how to scare yourself down, a la Mission Impossible, and then do a search.
And then do the search that way. Just don't sweat on the tile. As for me, you can find me about.me/tninja3000. You can hit me up directly here on Google+, or better yet, I'm a lot more active on Twitter, so LTG Tony should be right here, somewhere below me. As for the rest of the crew, you can contact all of us at lazytechguys.com. As mentioned before, our contact information is as follows. You can email us at comments@lazytechguys.com. Call us at 707-722-5299. We are trying to be a lot more active on all the social networks. I'm trying to be a lot more active on the Google Pluses, because it is not a dead ghost town. It's very active, and I want to prove that point. But yeah, our YouTube channel is Lazy Tech TV. Our very own Andrew Lee is constantly throwing up videos of gameplay. He's doing some more gameplay on Watch Dogs right now. He finally got his video card working, and yeah, that game's a lot of fun. I played it at his house. I was kind of inebriated, but I was playing it. I was like, yeah, I'm cool. I can turn things on without touching it. That's great. I'm a hacker.
Yeah, it's actually a very nice concept.
Yeah, it really is. So I'm excited to see like some other things that are coming out. That I know one of his friends wants to talk to us about the expansion pack on the Street Fighter because he's a big Street Fighter fan. So maybe we'll do a video with him. We'll see. Yeah. So stay tuned, stay classy, and we will see you guys later. Thank you very much. Have a good one.